Sundram, you're an art historian by training, as well as a movie maker. You're, as we heard from Robin, an international gallery founder, proprietor, and director by profession. So, what do you think that a documentary about architectural history can achieve that other media, such as a book or an exhibition, cannot? And how close is the movie?
Building, the experience of going through the building and exploring the structures is truly filming. And so, in addition to that, when you think about it, how many people go to Bangladesh? There's more or less zero tourism. There's a great deal of NGOs and international diplomatic community, and there happens to be 8 people. But as tourism, people who are interested in culture, they will go there. Lately, however, there is the Dhaka Art Summit that has become very, very popular. And it's through this artistic sort of context, people are going there and they're getting to see the building. There's been a great deal of sort of trips have been taken from Guggenheim, Museum of Modern Art, and I've bumped into some of the folks, the trustees of these museums that are going there, purely because of both the incredible nature of the building and the novelty of going there. So both sides of it. But essentially, one of the reasons I wanted to make a film as opposed to writing a book was to bring Dhaka back to the people out here. And that was principally the reason.
Thank you. One more question. What would you say the optimistic spirit that comes across, the modernistic ideals of faith in democratic institutions, internationalism, peace and progress that Kant's work embodies? Some would say that that's taken something of a beating in recent decades. Could you please say a little bit more about the origins and fate of that sort of modernistic dream in general in South Asia, and perhaps how Kant's work influenced architects in Asia, especially in Bangladesh?
You're asking a political question.
To some extent, well, it's not really a political question, it's about sort of culture.
Living in a challenging times.
I mean, the transition from modernism to postmodernism.
Look, you saw when I was showing the building of Chandigarh, and then you had the Prime Minister Nehru. There were all of these great leaders of South Asia, the democratic side of the leaders, you know. They were really interested in participating and engaging in the ideas of modernism, the ideals of modernism. If you see Nehru, he was both supporting artists like Hussain and a whole range of Bombay progressive groups, and actually helped mount shows outside of India. And in terms of architecture, he recruited these great architects, Corbusier. You saw in Sarabhai family engage with Richard Neutra, and even Frank Lloyd Wright designed homes in Ahmedabad. And of course, the impact of Louis Kahn is just unbelievable. The number of, it's become a part of the vernacular tradition to use brick and the big circular forms. And all the ways, not just in India or South Asia, all the way across Africa and other parts of the world. The impact is so enormous, and the idea of deconstructing the ideas about light and silence, what it means. At least people like to quote that, so there's some conscious decision to emulate what Kant has done, and out of that create a kind of a vernacular language. So it has had a profound impact in that part of the world. In addition to that, if you look at what Louis Kahn did in Bangladesh, for instance, or in Ahmedabad, for instance, for that matter, is seen as a local architecture. They're absolutely considered by the people to be their own. They don't even question that. And that's the power of what Louis Kahn was able to achieve. Here's this man from literally across the globe, and coming from a completely different tradition. He's coming from a kind of Nordic tradition, and then he's an American, and then he creates for something like that South Asian, which is bordering Burma, and produces something that people want to own it. And they claim it's theirs. And that's the profound nature of his work.
Thank you. Sue-Ann, can I ask you the next question, which is about your work in conserving the physical legacy of Louis Kahn and your work in that direction. Do you have any comments on that?
Oh, well, this is a serious issue, and Nathaniel and Sister Alex Ting, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, we have, and any number of other people along with us, are very concerned about the conservation of these buildings. I think Bangladesh has taken this quite seriously. The Indian School of Management, there are problems right now about maintaining the whole campus and not tearing some of it down. Basically, we're trying to inspire or urge the people who own these buildings to conserve them for the future. And the idea that Lou built these buildings as monuments that might be as great as the Parthenon. I have to say, as a child growing up, over the breakfast table, what I heard about was not, the latest sports teams, but I heard about the Boston Caracalla and the Pantheon. And I don't know what I imagined those to be as a child, but I finally saw them. But the reverence for the monumentality of architecture and the timelessness of it was there from the beginning. And our job, I think, as far as we can devote our time to it, is to try to inspire people to keep those buildings alive and standing up. So that is a very important thing.
Thank you very much. Gina, thanks for joining us. So you've worked on bringing Louis Kahn design to life, or to reality in recent times, posthumously. So could you sort of tell us about that experience just a little bit, and how the film rang with you, having gone through that?
Well, I think building anything of Kahn's, and I'm sure Henry can attest to this as well, is incredibly challenging and very stressful. He had an enormous dedication to precision, and that is really something that's hard to achieve, especially given in the FDR Memorial, the size of the blocks and the material that we were working with. It was really, really hard to get those tolerances, but the team really came together and understood the importance and the significance of what they were building. And in the end, I think the dedication of every person on that team shows in the incredible precision with which those stones were set. So it was challenging, but an incredible opportunity.
Well, thank you. And Henry, I mean, Michael Rubenstein in the film said he was not a pragmatist, Louis Kahn. So what was it like?
I don't know what it means.
Well, someone like, I've read numerous, articles and so on that say that, things were not always on time.
Oh, yeah, you could use this thing. Yeah, I've read.
Quite close, yes.
I have read and have listened to various architectural critics and art historians speak about Lou in terms that I fully do not understand. And the thing that I most related to, of course, is the DACA project. So I can speak more to that than to the other projects that were in the office, though I did work on some of the other ones. But most of my time was spent with the DACA work. And I'm avoiding your question, of course.
It's just a prompt.
Yeah. Okay, just a prompt. But what I would like the people to understand, and this is clear to me, and that is every cubic yard or foot of concrete has been touched by some hand. There were thousands of people on that site working. They lived there, as it was alluded to in one scene in the movie there. And you could go out to that site early morning or late night, and there were people there. There were little fires burning, tea being boiled, and they were just happy to see you, and they were happy to work. And the thing is that early on, at that site, I would go out there and I would meet people and I would see the laborers and I would chat with them and sit with them and whatnot, have my tea. And then the next time I would go out, it would be another group. And I would start looking for faces that I knew before, and they were no longer there. And what was going on is that it was a training program. And these people were being shipped out to the Middle East. And it made income for the government to send these trained people out and do buildings in Dubai and whatnot, for various governments. So it was a constant changeover of people. But I give credit, I had talked to Lou many times about this. We were traveling in our quiet, wet moments. And we would talk about DACA and talk about the building and whatnot. And we realized that it was not ours, it was not Lou's. It was their house. Because so many of the people who were participating in it, it was actually theirs. We were just there to help. That's all. And this is the way I felt about it and still feel about it. And actually, if my pillow could talk, it would still talk about the details that I still would work on. There's some unfinished things going on out there. And as an architect, you lay down and you say, okay, the job is done. I can go home now. Thank you very much. It's dedication. It's, horns blowing, flags waving. And then you wake up and you say, oh, why didn't I do this? I haven't really finished that detail yet. So this just goes on and on and on. But anyway,
Nathaniel, so you're a movie director as well, and you recently released a powerful documentary about the contemporary art market, the value of everything, and your film, 2001, My Architect. Insights did you get?
I just want to add.
Yes, sorry.
If you haven't seen My Architect, you have to see it.
Yeah.
It's beautifully done, and I think it was nominated for the Academy. And it's stunning, and so it was a great inspiration, but I was afraid to watch it more than once. Because, as you can understand, you're making a film, but Nathaniel will explain more.
Yeah, I mean, what were the insights that you gained and further
I enjoyed the insights of tonight, and you figured out how to put more shots of yourself in your film than I did. And from the back, even, you look good.
Thank you.
No, this is always a challenge. How does one put oneself in a film? I thought you handled it really well. No, I learned a great deal from this film. I thought it was terrific. So well done. Well done.
Keep on complimenting each other.
No, it's so many things. You managed to get a lot of tension in the film, which is also something I wanted in my film. There is this kind of sense of the enormous risk of undertaking not only a project like making a film like this, but you captured the risk that he was constantly taking by trying to do something this audacious. And that got me. And Henry, you got that too. He was a full person, and he gave the full measure of his life to doing these things. And these days it's extraordinary to see people who do that. We tend to hold back, and he didn't hold back. And I think you captured that. I did want to ask you a question though. You knew that Lou was a member of the Tagore Society, and I wanted to know, because he cared a lot about your grandfather. I was curious to know, for those of you who don't know, Sundaram's grandfather is a great, great poet, Rabindranath Tagore. And I was curious to know why you didn't include that.
Well, you said a lot of very interesting things. And you talked about Bengal, you talked about Satyajit Ray, you talked about this kind of moving experience. I didn't want any of that.
I didn't mean me, I didn't mean what you put me. I'm just curious because it's part of your story, your connection to him.
Yeah, I was afraid of that. You already mentioned about it, but too much of myself in the
Don't say too much.
Yeah.
Don't say too much. No, you figured out how to do yourself. Don't say too much.
Working. And I said, we need to drive it. And the driving it, that became, I was narrating it and it didn't work. It simply didn't work. It looked kind of odd. And so then I went back and started reading myself within the film.
I guess the thing that maybe to respond to your question, the thing that I so enjoyed about this is our father was somebody who inspired so many people in different ways. And if you're a kind of person who can have more than one film made about you, then you must have really done something. So he really managed to do something. And it's nice to see that this legacy of him and his presence in the world continues on and continues to inspire other people in different ways. And that's, I think that means a lot to us as his children. So.
So art begets art, really, and we wonder if we could open up to some questions from our audience. Thank you. We have a roving mic, so please wait for that question over there. Yes, thank you.
I actually have two questions. First is I'd like to know about his relationship with Vincent Scully, who of course was a renowned professor at Yale and spoke extraordinarily highly. Did he have a personal relationship, or was it just professional? The second
No, he did. They were friends.
They were and did they regularly meet, or how did he?
Yes, I mean yes, they were friends, and they taught at Yale together. Vincent was a young man in 1948 when our father went to Yale to teach, and Vincent was a very early champion of his work and wrote the first book really about him in 1962. So Vincent and Scully really helped him in the beginning part of his career. Later in his career, a little less so, but they remained friends. Vincent sadly has passed away recently, but a great art historian, one of the greatest teachers I personally ever had. And my sister and I attended his last lecture, I think, about our father, which was just before he retired anyway. He remained a good friend.
The second question is on the film. I was wondering why there was not more activity in all of the buildings that you were showing. In other words, most of the capital we saw was where it was, vacant, so to speak. There was not the daily routine. Was that purposeful on their part, or is it just that way, not being used?
No, there's a great deal of activity. As you can imagine, it's in Parliament, people are coming in continuously. But we were given permission to use that building. We had carte blanche and to occupy that building and at the times of holidays. And the last trip I went, which was with Deborah Winger, we were given access to the building when the whole city cleared out. You can't believe what we saw. Literally, people were like riding on trains, on top of the trains. And they were all leaving for the villages to return back to their homes. And Dhaka is also, outside of Dhaka is really beautiful. It's pristine, kind of, the green, the verdant green, sort of emerald green colors, and beautiful forest land. But the city itself is become kind of a delirious Dhaka. It's packed. It takes, from the airport to get to your hotel, it takes sometimes 2.5 to 3 hours. So when the government gave me access, they said, you better come here during the holidays, otherwise you're not going to get anywhere. And so that's one of the reasons, there are very, very few people. but it's actually pulsating and beating with people within the parliament.
Thank you.
That was true actually during the construction. That invariably I would get out there and it was some, Eid, one of the Eids going on, or some sort of holiday, and all of a sudden the place is empty. And and actually you ride a bus to get around, The rickshaw drivers have gone back to the villages. And I would get out there, and that's in one of the quotes there that was in the film about where this young man had asked me about the building and where else could it be. It was on one of those kind of days. It was a beautiful morning. It was after a rainstorm through the night, and I was just out wandering around and walking through the site with my notebook, taking notes and a few shots and whatnot, a couple of sketches. And this group was sitting around having their tea. And they just got up and just started following me around. And the leader of the group began to speak and asked permission to speak. And we carried on that conversation. And he mentioned every country, capital that he could possibly think of, to get me to say where this building was. And I'll tell you that after he said that, one of us was very lucky, I went back to the hotel that evening to write down my notes and do a little juicing. And I started thinking about that. And here's this man, this laborer, telling me how lucky he and his countrymen were. And I thought about all the floods, the famine, the poverty, and it really touched me and it stayed with me forever. And I always think about that because they consider themselves lucky, and that's why I say to you that it is their building, it is their home.
Thank you. There's a question from the gentleman in the middle. Okay.
Mr. Tagore, my name is LKTC. I have a question about how you met Deborah Winger, because I find it amazing, these circumstantial facts.
So, I met her originally in Oxford, and I skipped classes and I was watching them make the film. And we connected that way, but what happened is that Deborah Winger has been involved in building hospitals in Bengal. And so there was a natural sort of relationship with that part of the world, and especially with this eye hospital. And so I took her there. I actually took her there because there was a connection already built in, and that's the reason I kind of fabricated that story.
But it's a nice point, and that was the college at Oxford that we were at, so Morley College.
Actually,
Yes,
that eye hospital was in the way.
Yeah.
Gentleman there, yes.
Thank you so much. I thought it was a beautiful film, informative about a whole part of the world. But what struck me most was that this Parliament, the way it was designed, the way the people felt a part of it, that it was theirs, it was a blow for democracy. It was a setting 2 feet in place that we are going to be a free people. And I think that's why it is felt, the kinship is felt with the people. That came across to me as a living tradition, if you would. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments on that point? Yeah.
All I would add to that is beautifully stated. That when you go to Dhaka, and that's a monument that stands out for the Bangladeshi people, and what they had to do to achieve that, even at that point where they did become freedom, it was half built, and at that point, Mujibur Rahman, the president of the country, a lot of people said, let's scrap this idea. Let's not build it. We don't have the money. They didn't have anything. they literally had zero money, they were in debt. And he had the vision, and the people he surrounded himself had the vision, and some of these private individuals actually gave him money. And they said, you got to build this. And what they were saying is they gave him jewelry, and Marius was talking about that is a kind of some kind of historical connection with the past.
Yeah, I think it's classical origins.
But that's what
to
they
that.
did actually, even in the Indian independence they did that.
Yeah.
So they had the vision to not only build as in parliament, but more than the parliament. It was a very symbol of what they were fighting for. So that's why it's so important.
I'd also just say that in New York City, there's a large Bangladeshi community, and if you ask any one of them that you meet, they all know this building, they all know the name of the architect of this building, which I think is incredible. It's a testament to the importance of this building to everyone. I mean, I think you could ask Americans, you know, who designed the Capitol, they wouldn't know, but this...
I don't know.
but this, you know, this building is very, very important to them.
The two questions.
You know, they were saying, the building started under, you know, Pakistan, when there was the East and West. And it was Ayub's way, or the West Pakistani, to pacify the Bengalis out there in the East. And as it was mentioned in the film there, when Pakistan was created, you know, they wanted this one language of Urdu, and they really frowned upon the Bengali speaking Bengali. And I'm sorry to admit that I never learned any Bengali, but I did learn real Urdu, because I spent more time in Pakistan early on before this project got underway. When Lou first came out, it's when I met him, and they showed these mounds of brick, and that's what was there. The site was 200 acres, and they were saying that, okay, Professor, here's the site, and here's your material. You know, and it was just mounds of brick. And that's what they were expecting. I think both client and architect did not know what they were getting into.
Question there, gentleman in the grey sweater.
A compliment and a question. The compliment is, I thought it was beautifully done, and putting yourself in it, and having us walk in your footsteps, and you walking in his footsteps, literally, was wonderful. And I particularly want to compliment you on the cinematography and how you portrayed the building, which, you know, you think you could see it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 angles, but we must have seen it 100 angles, and it never got old, and never got boring, never got repetitive. So I think that was beautiful. The question is, it seems very spiritual seeking person, and I'm wondering if his own religion, if he drew any kind of inspiration, if he looked into his own background and religion and found any kind of inspiration from Judaism.
I'll let you take that. We'll confer for a moment. Sure, yes, but I think he did take certainly inspiration from being Jewish. He was proud of being Jewish. But I think ultimately his sense of spirituality was more important than any particular. He had a sense of religion in general, that the spiritual nature of human beings is one of our highest aspirations, and that transcended any particular religion on a certain level. But spirituality was enormously important to him. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a person who built a church in Rochester, a very well thought of church. Designed the Horva synagogue that was never built. And I used to teach him that the millennium, which of course would come if he built the thing, and who knows what would happen to the world. So he designed that, and another synagogue in Philadelphia that was never built. And here is a Jewish immigrant who designed a mosque in the poorest country in the world. And spirit, I mean, he never really practiced religion, but that he was a spiritual being, there's no question. And that is a very big distinction. And it's spirituality that links us all, not religion. So,
I think his religion was architecture.
yeah.
Really, honestly, if you think about it, and that's how he made his offering, and that's how he connected with the humanity part, poured in purely through his architecture, and that's the offering that he wanted to make.
I just want to add something, which is that something that I thought Sandra brought out quite perfectly in the film, which is this is a person who made the world a better place through art. I wouldn't even say architecture, but through art, and the power of art, and how that is a human condition that unites us all. I think I think he was very proud of that. Sure that I think he was very proud of that.
Thank you. One more question, I think. We've got a forest of hands going up. Two more questions. Okay.
So Gunnar, I loved your journey through time, and it gave me an insight into his building that was quite spectacular. And I've studied him actually in school here, being an architect. But what really moved me most was Dhaka. You see his architecture all throughout, all light and power, and then you get into Dhaka, and you see this it looks like hurricanes hit it, and hurricane of brilliance. The man must have been incredible. What was he thinking? With a band of students saying, okay, I'll start tomorrow. Please, I'd love to hear something about it.
The risk of taking on a project like that. Well, the question was like...
about it.
Yeah, well, about the man who was willing to take that kind of risk with starting the students like tomorrow.
He had, long before I had met Luca, he had worked on planning a city, and he always wanted to do that. And this was an opportunity for him. He had no idea when he got out there exactly what they were talking about or what they were asking. Part of it had to do with their own politics, because it was going to be the second capital. The first capital was being built at the time in Islamabad, which the Pakistanis had created in northern Pakistan, because the original capital of Pakistan was Karachi, which is a seaport. Now up in the hills of Pathan country, because of Ayub Khan, he was from that area, and so they created Islamabad. And then they said, well, we must do something in Dhaka, so we'll build a second capital. And what was going to take place is that at different times of the year, the legislative meeting would take place in Dhaka. Now, that's why if you look at the total site, and you'll see these hostels for the ministers, secretaries, and whatnot, members of the National Assembly, it's because they were in transit. And there were not enough hotels and whatnot to take care of this body of people that would descend upon Dhaka during session. So that's how it was all started. And then, of course, when the War of Liberation came about, then everything changed.
Yeah, to add to that a little bit, that's exactly right, Henry. Lou was also commissioned, it's sort of referred to here, but commissioned to design the President's Palace for West Pakistan, so that was in Islamabad. And he proceeded between 1963 and 1965 to attempt to also take over that entire site as well. So he kept designing other stuff. He didn't really want to do the President's Palace because that's kind of just too fancy, So he kept trying to design the Assembly building also for West Pakistan, and he almost lost this commission over that. So around 1965, they said, hey, listen, if you're not going to focus on Dhaka, you're not going to have this job. And then he was fired from the job in Islamabad, which he really felt bad about.
Thank you. One more question.
Can I add something to that? All I want to say is that if you look at in the context of architecture and architects today, I don't want to be disrespectful. I mean, he essentially got a kind of a ragtag team of students, and there were professionals like Moshe Safdie, Renzo Piano, and a whole group of other people, but generally students, right? And you were a professional. But in contrast, if you look at architects today, like Norman Foster or someone like that, would have 1,000 employees to work on a project. And I don't know how he made it happen. While he was building Dhaka, he was building Exeter, Salk Institute, so many other projects. I don't know how he did it. And that was an amazing part.
Well, then, those are the ones that were built. There are many other things going on. We only had 25 or so people, but the beauty of that office, and your first question to me about that, and that is that the beauty of that office is what people don't understand. It was an office made up of people from Scotland, from Germany, from Finland, from Japan, from India, from Pakistan. There were Turkey. There were people from all over the world. Young people working in that office. And that's what it was all about. And it wasn't, as someone of the critics has said, talking about that he didn't use the word sloppy, but sloppy and undisciplined. It wasn't that at all. We were in love with that place. You know, even though we didn't get paid, but we still liked it.
Just a point that I'd like to make in terms of giving appreciation for Sunderland's access is that it's pretty rare and it's diminished now. Your access was quite privileged, and it's really not possible that everyone should understand these days. And going back to Henry's point, his anecdote from being on the site, it was populated 24/7 with rotating workers and the support staff that those workers needed to keep things going. And the idea that every worker touched every inch of that place is quite reverent. And the people of Bangladesh really do consider this campus, this building, to be their private place that is being pulled away from them. First, from the grounds where they used to spend their weekends, they're no longer allowed to do so. The building is highly restricted. There are fences going up that they fight constantly for, or a wall was planned that luckily was reneged, but it seems to be an ongoing problem or fight. And going back to Sue Ann's point about conservation, there should also be a consideration of the conservation of the intent of that place.
Scott, I want to address what you're saying. This is a wonderful person speaking now. Scott Benedict has done a wonderful book about Dhaka and his experiences trying to get in the building, which you should all see. You raise a really important point, which really refers to all of us, which is that an architect can only give so much. They can give the building, and they can give their soul to that building, which becomes the property of the people. But democracy is fragile, and it can be lost. And a building won't save that. Ultimately, that's up to all of us to be sure that we preserve that, not only here, but for the people of Bangladesh.
Final question for the woman and the lady in the back, in the sort of middle there, yeah.
Hi, I hope I can say this properly or sufficiently enough, but given the world we're living in today, as you just mentioned, to be so inspired from the first scenes we see in this film.
Sorry, could you hold your mic
of
a bit
Dhaka.
closer? Thank
Is
you.
this better?
That's better. That's better.
So the first moment we see these gorgeous buildings, I felt so moved and so inspired. And the final result of this second film on the great Louis Khan, who deserves all the respect and acknowledgement possible, is that I feel inspired in spite of what we're going through today, which is what art, architecture, music, literature can do. But to see it so presented, to see the work of Louis Khan so presented, I hope inspires many people. Thank you.
present time, what is going on out there legislatively and whatnot is that people from the very beginning attempted to encroach upon the land. You know, if you had the money, you could do it. Attempted to do it, and what Lou had written to the government, people in charge, is that anything that was going to go up near or on that land had to have his approval first. And that's written down. You can find it in the archive someplace. But of late, a group came here to talk with the people in the archives and look at the drawing and speak with me about what was going on. And that is that they're trying to preserve the master plan as it was first conceived by Khan. And that's what they're about now, doing out there. And I think it's a wonderful thing that they're attempting to do because, you know, a little bit of land gets chewed away every now and then. Everybody, the politicians and whatnot, wants to be buried there. And, you know, that's not the place for them.
Thank you. And I'm going to give the final words to Sundaram, just to wrap up with his response, not only to the event today, but to his reflection on making the film.
Truly one of the great photogenic buildings in the world. And when you go there, you can't go wrong, no matter which direction you take. This fantastic sort of proportions and scale, and it takes beautiful photographs. And, but thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you. You made it really special.